Welcome to the fifth lecture in communication skills. This time around we are going to look at the types of communication. So types of communication is our topic of consideration today, and you need to understand that communication is actually the act of transmitting information, ideas and attitude that is from one person to another. Okay, so for that reason communication takes place among individuals belonging to various categories and backgrounds, and then they put into operation various types of communication. So now the different types of communication that we have, we've got verbal communication, written communication, non-verbal communication, mass communication, visual communication, group communication, feedback communication. Okay, so now these are the types of communication. So now you need to know that we have got types of communication based on a channel. So we have got verbal communication and non-verbal communication. These are the types of communication based on the channel, right? So now under verbal communication we have what was written communication, and as we move on this time we are also going to discover that we also have oral communication. So from verbal communication we have written communication as well as oral communication. Okay, so these are the types of communication that we have, and we are still going to talk about more of them in this lecture. Okay, so now we make progress now talking about these types of communication. You need to understand that communication occurs in different forms. That depends on the nature of the message, the participants that are involved, and the context in which it takes place. So now you understand that understanding the various types of communication is important. Why? Because it helps individuals choose an appropriate method of conveying message, that is in academics, professional and social settings. So now this lecture actually it will examine the major types of communication, explaining their characteristics, uses and significance in everyday life. Right, so we start with the first type of communication, which is actually verbal communication. Now verbal communication, this one, the type of communication is based on the channel. So now what is verbal communication? Verbal communication refers to the use of spoken or written words to convey meaning. So now this verbal communication is actually one of the most common and direct forms of communication. So verbal communication may actually occur in face-to-face conversations, classroom discussions, meetings, lectures, or written text such as letters, emails, and reports. That's according to DeVito 2019. Right, so now verbal communication actually relies heavily on language, vocabulary, grammar, and clarity of expression. So you understand by the end of the day that effective verbal communication requires careful word choices, clear sentence structure, and appropriate tone. So now in spoken communication, factors such as pronunciation, pitch, and volume also influence meaning. So in academic and professional context, verbal communication plays a critical role in teaching, presentations, interviews, and formal correspondences. Right, so that is all about verbal communication. Let's get to know what non-verbal communication is. Right, so now what is non-verbal communication? So now non-verbal communication involves conveying meaning without the use of words. So it includes facial expressions, gestures, postures, eye contact, body movement, and physical appearance. So now non-verbal cues often accompany verbal messages and can actually reinforce, contradict, or replace spoken words. So now actually the research shows that a significant portion of human communication is non-verbal, making it actually a powerful component of interaction. For example, a speaker's tone of voice and facial expression may reveal emotions that words alone do not express. However, non-verbal communication is strongly influenced by culture and the gestures that are actually acceptable in one culture or may be appropriate or misunderstood in another. So to understand that non-verbal communication, the way it is, it's always strongly influenced by culture, and sometimes gestures that are acceptable in one culture may be inappropriate or misunderstood in another culture. Okay, right. So that's what you need to know about non-verbal communication. Let's move on to written communication. So now, what is written communication? Written communication refers to the transmission of message through written symbols and texts. Examples includes letters, reports, essays, mails, notices, and official documents. And then you are going to realize that written communication is particularly important in academic and professional environments. Why? Because it provides a permanent record that can be referred to at a later stage. So now, according to Gaffey, effective written communication requires clarity, accuracy, organization, and proper grammar. Unlike spoken communication, which is written, okay, so unlike spoken communication, written communication does not allow for immediate feedback. That could be now the disadvantage, which means the writer must anticipate possible misunderstandings and address them through clear and well-structured writing. Because this time around, as you write, you are alone, and you are taking it, that message is going to the audience, who may not have the chance to ask what they are from what they are reading. So the one who is conveying through writing must make sure that he anticipates possible misunderstandings and address them all through clear and well-structured writing, so that whoever is going to read, they must be able to understand everything, okay, in fullness. We also have what we call as a visual communication. Okay, so now, what is visual communication? Visual communication, this is the type of communication that involves the use of visual elements to convey information and meaning. Now, these elements may include charts, graphs, diagrams, pictures, symbols, and videos. So now, visual communication is widely used in education, business, and media so as to simplify complex information and enhance understanding. So now, Mark Konak 2018 notes that visual aids improve comprehension and retention, more especially when combined with verbal explanations. So in the digital age, like this time where we are living in, visual communication now has become increasingly important due to the widespread use of multimedia platforms and social media. All right, we move on to another important type of communication, that is formal and informal communication. So now we start with the formal. So now you will understand that communication can also be classified as formal or informal based on structure and context. So now you will understand that formal communication follows established rules, channels, and procedures, and is commonly used in organizations and institutions. For example, or examples include official letters, reports, meetings, and notices. These are examples of formal communication. So informal communication, on the other hand, is more casual and spontaneous, and this occurs through conversations, social interactions, and informal messages. So you understand that both formal and informal communications are important. Okay, then while formal communication ensures accuracy and accountability, informal communication promotes social interaction and relationship building within what? Within an organization. Okay, we move on to intrapersonal and interpersonal communication. These are other types of communication. So now you are going to understand that intrapersonal communication is the type of communication that occurs within an individual. So this one, it includes self-talk, self-reflection, and internal thought process. So now this type of communication influences self-awareness, decision making, and emotional regulations. What about interpersonal communication? Interpersonal communication is the type of communication that occurs between two or more individuals, and this involves the exchange of messages to create shared understanding. So this one is very important for building relationships, resolving conflicts, and collaborating with others. So De Vito emphasizes that effective interpersonal communication requires listening, empathy, and feedback. This is very important. We also have another important type of communication, which is called group communication as well as mass communication. So now, what is group communication and what is mass communication? Now, group communication is a type of communication that involves interaction among a small number of people, such as in group discussions, meetings, or team projects. So now, you will understand that effective group communication requires cooperation, turn-taking, and respect for diverse viewpoints. So what about mass communication? Mass communication refers to the transmission of messages to a large audience, that is through mass media such as radio, television, newspapers, and online platforms. So now, mass communication plays a significant role in informing the public, shaping opinions, and influencing social behavior. So now, in summary, communication takes various forms, and these forms include verbal, non-verbal, written, visual, interpersonal, group, and mass communication. Now, you will understand that each type serves a unique purpose and is suitable for specific contexts. So now, therefore, understanding these types of communication enables individuals to select appropriate communication methods and improve effectiveness in academic, professional, and social interactions. You are going to understand that we have got various types of communication, just like I've already indicated. So here we've got types of communication. We have types of communication based on communication channels. So types of communication based on communication channels, we have got verbal and non-verbal. Then under verbal communication, we have oral communication and written communication. Then on the other side, based on style and purpose, that's why we have formal communication and informal communication. In other lectures, we are going to look at other types of communication, where we have formal communication, informal communication, interpersonal communication, as well as non-verbal communication, of which most of these I have already explained what they are, but we are going to do further explanations. Then under formal communication, we have what we call horizontal communication, vertical communication, and diagonal communication. We are also going to discuss these. Then oral communication and written communication, we already know that these, they fall under what we call as verbal communication. So oral communication and written communication, these are the types of verbal communication. And we already know what interpersonal communication is, which is simply the communication between two or more people having facial or face-to-face, conversations. Okay, so oral communication and written could be part of this interpersonal communication. Right, so this is where we end.